Hello and welcome to Business Spotlight today, where I'm joined by Emma Greer, who's the owner of Magnetic Copy, and she specialises in copywriting. Emma, welcome to Business Spotlight.
Thanks so much for having me, Yvonne. It's lovely to be here.
Good. So Emma, tell us, what is copywriting?
So copywriting is essentially the words that you use to communicate with your target customer. So with kind of specific reference to what I do, that's website copy. So all of the words on your website, your blog posts, articles, all the words that you use essentially to put your message out there, to show your value, and to really just try and attract the right kind of people to your business. It's really how you're selling yourself.
Okay. And how did you get into copywriting then? Where did that start from?
So I always did it in jobs before I kind of set up on my own. I did that classic thing I think a lot of people do of falling into marketing completely by accident while I was at uni through various kind of extracurricular performance stuff I was doing. I took a show to the Edinburgh Fringe and nobody else wanted to be behind organising or marketing it. So I was like, right, well, I guess I'll do it. And then I just totally fell in love with just the impact that the right words could have on selling a product or a service, or in that case a show. You know, we sold out that show for a couple of nights, which for our first run in the Edinburgh Fringe for a uni group was not a common thing to happen. And so that kind of got stuck in the back of my head, because I'd been in that place of thinking, what am I going to do with my life, because I genuinely didn't know what I was going to do after my degree. And then from there I got an internship in tourism and hospitality, and I was writing websites, blog posts, social media, email marketing. And then from there, I got my first job in the travel industry as a content writer for Barhead Travel. And that was really kind of the kickoff point to writing full time. So even when I moved into another job in another travel company and I was more of a general marketer, about 80% of my time was spent writing copy, writing emails, writing blogs, writing social media. And I just couldn't believe that I got to write all the time for a job, and that people responded to it, and that it was actually really doing the thing that it needed to do, which was describe the value of the service that was being offered to the right people.
And I think that's something that, we'll come back to, is, people love what you do. And I hear so much about people talking about how you express their businesses in words that they've never found themselves. Was there an early interest in writing or reading, or was there something in your childhood that maybe would have given you a clue that this was where you were heading?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was that kid who, like, every Saturday morning I was taking out the maximum number of books at the library, like genuinely as nerdy as it sounds like. And I'm still that kid to an extent with fiction books. You know, I try to read one fiction book every week for the whole year. That's the goal for this year. So I've always loved stories. I've always been a huge reader. I was a huge creative writer in school as well. Any creative writing assignments we got to do were something that I really, really enjoyed. And that was all the way up to kind of the end of my A levels. We got to do creative writing assignments, and that was always where I really excelled. But there was something about creative writing that I was never quite sold on as a degree subject, for example. I just wasn't quite sure that that was what I wanted to do. And, you know, at that point, I didn't know copywriting was a thing. So it was almost like that combination of loving to read, loving to write, loving to just take in stories as much as I can, with that discovery that you can write in a different way, and that could be my job. It was like the light bulb went off in my head, and that was what made me realize. But yeah, I've always been a huge word person.
Word person. And so for the business owners out there, or people who've, are writing blogs or have their own websites, and I think I've done a decent job. Why would I employ you, or look to have a copywriter?
Yeah.
What kind of things would you bring that maybe I'm missing?
So there's a couple of different things, really. I think the number one thing, actually, a lot of the time is time. That's what it comes down to, because we all know, especially in service businesses, when we're working with clients all the time, that's where we excel. That's what we're best at. And it can take people a really long time to put together a page of copy, or it can take somebody a really long time to not just write a blog, but plan the strategy, plan the content, plan the sequence that everything's going to go out in. And realistically, it's something that a lot of business owners, not that they don't have the time to do it, but is it the best use of their time? That's always the question that I think is worth asking, like with a lot of things. I think as well, sometimes, and we're all guilty of it, is we can get so kind of stuck in the day-to-day and the really fine detail of what it is that we're doing, that we almost lose sight of the bigger picture. And that is, what am I actually doing for my target client or customer? What problem am I solving? How am I making their lives better? And the thing I would always say about a copywriter, it's like with so many services, having that external perspective, somebody to come in who doesn't have that same depth of knowledge about the actual thing that you're providing, is just able to look at things from a totally different angle and maybe help you see it from a different perspective that could be really valuable to your target audience.
And so for any business owner, they're thinking, well, you need to have depth of knowledge about my subject matter, what that is, and does Emma have it? What, what would you say to a question like that?
I do a lot of research, I think is the end point. Every client I work with, before I ever put pen to paper, we have a conversation, an in-depth conversation where I get to know them, the business, the values, specifically what it is they offer, anything they've got that they can send me over. I will take, I'll look at competitors, I'll look at the wider market, I'll look at the audience, I'll look on social media, I'll look at their testimonials. And it helps me build up that really rich knowledge base of what it is they do, but just without thinking of it from the implementation side, I suppose, if that makes sense, always thinking about it from the customer side. And another way I like to challenge people actually is, do your target customers or do your target clients know as much about this as you do? And could you actually be overwhelming people by kind of going into that huge depth of knowledge that you have from the off? Is it actually better to keep things as more of a bird's eye view at the top and give people the information they really need, and then after they've got in touch and got through that point, you can start to expand on that, because that's your skill set?
Yeah. And just picking up on what you said there, how well do you think people know who their target audience or customer is? Do you find that they've got that nailed, or you have to do some work with them?
I think that it's one of the big questions that we cover whenever we kind of do that kickoff call with any new client project. And people always actually end up stopping to think about it a little bit more than they maybe expect, especially if it's something new that they're launching, or if it's something that just hasn't quite been working. And I always really encourage people to actually look at the data, look at who it is that's visiting your website, look at who it is you're working with, because so often, I think when people start out, they build these customer avatars that they think are exactly who their target client is. And then maybe 6 months, a year, even longer passes, and they just don't revisit them. And then whenever you actually give the prompt to look at that information again, oftentimes it's actually quite different, because your business changes, or perhaps actually you just weren't looking at the right people to start with in the first place. And actually you've really found exactly who it is. But if you don't have a really clear idea in your head of who that person is and how you can find more of them, you're going to struggle to communicate with them in the right way. So it definitely always provides food for thought whenever we talk through that detail.
And so do you sometimes take copy that the customer's got already and actually make it better, or do you tend to do your own thing from scratch?
Yeah, it really depends on the requirements. Sometimes it is just a case of somebody's not quite hitting the nail on the head with the message, but there's a lot of really good stuff. It's not about, I always say, it's not about necessarily pulling the house down to the very foundations and building it up brick by brick. Sometimes it is just about giving it a wee bit of a spring clean or a revamp, because that's all it takes. Because it can be quite subtle what you need to actually do in order to really be talking to people in the most impactful way. But sometimes people just are very kind of self-aware that what they're doing just fundamentally isn't working. And then that's when we try and take it back to basics a little bit more. Or if someone's launching something new, because if it's a new service or a new product, it probably is going to be a slightly different audience than who they're used to targeting. So we really need to look at it from that perspective and build it up from the beginning.
Okay, so you're talking there about new products or new services. What other pain points or what other things might potential clients be experiencing that, if they're sitting listening to this, that you could help with?
I think lack of confidence is actually something that comes up quite a lot, to be honest, Yvonne, because people kind of have a real complex about writing and how they communicate, and it can trace all the way back to when they were kids. Maybe a teacher said, you can't write, or you're not very good at this, or X, Y, and Z. And people actually hold that and carry that with them for quite a long time. And so lack of confidence in how they're communicating is a huge one, because oftentimes it's like with anything, with a website or with a blog, everybody tells you that you need these things, especially when you start out. And so you kind of cobble something together and chuck it out into the world and hope for the best. And I talk to a lot of people who, whenever they read their own website or they read their own words, they almost cringe a little bit, because they know it's not really representing who they are, what they do, and the value that they have to offer. So it's about really giving people that confidence, because if you can give people that base level of, this is who I am, this is how I communicate, and this is how I do it and how I talk to people, that carries through to so many other aspects of their business as well. You know, it's in one-to-one calls, it's in networking, it's in pitches, it's in presentations. It all comes back to having that kind of foundational understanding of, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is the value I offer, and this is who I am doing it for.
Yeah. Okay. And you know, you've talked about website there, you talked about blog. What's the core of your business? What's your core offering that, you know, you would say is the mainstay of what you offer?
It's definitely the website copy, for sure. It's the biggest kind of project and thing that I find that people need the most help with, because it's really almost your shop front, even if it's
Yeah.
not something that you're necessarily selling on. But I don't know about you, but anytime I'm buying something or doing research on something, I'm always going on people's websites before I would even remotely decide to make a purchase or to go with a service. So it's always about making sure that the website is reflecting exactly the right message. And then the other stuff is really just to bolster that and really get the content marketing kicked up a notch. So making sure there's regular blog content that helps with keywords, that helps with search rankings, helps with thought leadership. There's so many different aspects, but the website is definitely where everything usually needs to start, because that's the biggest thing that people have got the problem with.
And talk to me about your client base or your potential client base, your preferred client base. What
Yeah.
is a good client for you? Is there a particular niche? Is it a particular size of business?
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
So I love working with fellow creatives and people who are in the marketing space, because I think there's such a lovely like kind of crossover with what we do so often. So a web designer who's working with a client is an excellent person for me, for example, because we both run into the same problem in that the person who thinks they need content first, yes, they do, but is the website actually designed in a way that's going to attract the right people? Potentially not. So we can collaborate in that way. But then from a web designer's perspective, the content is always the thing that the business owner says, yeah, I'll get it to you, I'll get it to you. And then 6 months down the line, the web designer is tearing their hair out because they still don't have any content to populate this website. So actually outsourcing all of it at the same time is a really useful exercise, because it just means that it all gets done. And working with other people in marketing is something I love to do. So I've done, you know, website copy for photographers, SEO specialists, Google ad specialists, because it's just an industry that I'm very comfortable in and I have a lot of knowledge in, because that's what my whole career has been in so far. But I love working with people who want those really strong personal brands as well. So people like coaches and speakers and trainers, because the thing that I love the most about what I do is really getting to know a person and reflecting a person in the words. So really putting across personality, values, you know, ethos, mission, because so often especially for coaches and consultants, the USP is actually the person. That's who's going to be making that connection with the client. And that's who really has to come across, because it can be a little bit jarring sometimes whenever you read a website and you think, oh, this is who this person is. And then you speak to them and it's almost like a completely different person's coming across. You're a little bit like taken aback almost, because you're not quite sure which one's the real versions. I'm always trying to make sure someone is coming across really authentically, and the people who usually are most open to that and really want and crave that for their businesses are speakers, coaches, consultants and trainers. So I love working in those spheres for sure.
So I guess, you know, if you're not coming across authentically online, it almost negates the trust element that you need when you start to work with someone, doesn't it?
Totally, 100%. And because it is quite jarring, because, you know, different people want different things. So if you're coming across in a kind of super formal, uptight tone, for example, and then somebody comes on a call and you're very much not like that, you're automatically not meeting their expectations. And you're also, if you're coming across as something you're not, you're going to attract the people who probably aren't for you as well, because you want people who really get you and understand you and that you connect with, because those are the relationships that thrive and last the longest. So definitely it's really important to show up as much like yourself as you can.
Yeah, I get that. And so we've not rehearsed any questions, Emma, so I hope this is not going to be a difficult one for you. But so for business owners, we like to think of them talking about having an investment mindset rather than things being a cost. And copywriting would be an investment. How easy or hard is it to demonstrate return on investment? Because I would imagine in many ways it's quite qualitative rather than quantitative, but I might have that wrong. So what would you say to that?
100%. It's not one of those things where it's very easy to kind of see direct to conversion. I mean, obviously you can gauge it from the number of inquiries you get through a page, the number of bookings that you get on, especially if it's a sales page, for example. That's reasonably easy to quantify. I guess something that's always quite helpful actually is, and usually people have got something in place already. So it's a case of comparing it to what it was before to where it is now, if that makes sense. So it's how was it performing before versus how is it performing now? Is there a difference? But I think it also comes back to that confidence thing as well, because I always try to sell it on the value of, really helping you level up and really helping you become the face of your business and grow that confidence. And if you're not putting your website out there to people because you're a little bit embarrassed about what it says, you're not going to be getting conversions on it anyway. So if you feel really confident in the way that you are putting yourself across and in the communications that you're putting out there, that in itself is almost a return on investment, because the more you are putting yourself out there in that way and talking to people in the right way, the right clients are going to come to you, if that makes sense. So I think it's about giving people just that real foundation of how to communicate is something that I would say is really valuable. It's just hard to actually quantify an ROI quite a lot of the time.
Yeah. But you've got lots and lots of good reviews or even reviews from clients who tell the story of just how much you've changed the narrative of their business. So I guess that's a nice thing to reflect on.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
you're a young woman, successful businesswoman, what are some of the bumps along the way that maybe you've had in moving from being an employee to being a businesswoman?
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I think I didn't really know what to expect. Like, I was totally starting from ground zero, to be honest. When I started, I didn't have a huge amount of experience. I didn't have a huge network. I'd never been networking before. I'd never done any kind of one-to-one calls or anything, because there'd been no need in any of the jobs that I had done before. I was always behind the scenes. So all of a sudden, I had to be the face of the business. And it's almost why I really like helping more other people feel more confident, because when I started, like, the idea of posting on LinkedIn or putting up pictures or videos, I was like, oh, please, anything but this, because it just so wasn't in my nature. So that was a huge one, just from a confidence standpoint, that I had to really get over to help build my own personal brand and to help get my own name out there, and just to start meeting people and really building those relationships. I think that you need, and something that happens along the way, I think for sure, is really understanding how you want it to work for you as well. That's something that we've talked about a lot, is that work-life balance and taking on the right kind of clients. Again, it's why I'm so passionate about helping people do it, because there's always that gut feeling, I think, when you take on work that you're not quite sure about, that maybe it wasn't the right decision. And I would say 9 times out of 10, you're proved right. So it's about really getting to that stage of being able to be that little bit more selective and making sure that you're working with clients who align with what it is you're trying to do, and then also trying to provide solutions for the ones that you're just not the right fit for as well. And then I think the valuing myself thing is something that I've definitely had to do quite a lot of work on, and there's still a lot of work to do in that area. I'm very aware of that, but just valuing what I can do, as you said, based on those reviews I get from clients, based on the amount of repeat work that I get from clients, based on the number of referrals. It's really about owning that and having a pricing strategy that's reflective of that value that I have to offer to people.
For sure. And so you talked there about aligning with clients. Moving forward then, what does Magnetic Copy hold? What does the future hold for Magnetic Copy? What kind of clients are you going to be working with?
It's a big year in a lot of ways, because I've stepped up a level, or I'm in the process of stepping up a level much earlier than I think I had anticipated. And I've set some goals this year that I find quite scary. And I think, without your help, Yvonne, I don't know if I would have set them for myself anytime soon. So for me, it's very much about, keeping meeting more people in that speaking, coaching, training, consulting area, who really want to get tight on their messaging, really want to make sure they are bringing the right clients in, and really want to just push their business to the next level. Also, more collaboration, I think, is really important. So having those key web designers, having those SEO strategists, for example, having social media people, so we can all really work together. There's something kind of brewing behind the scenes that will help with maybe tendering for larger projects between a few of us that's quite exciting. But nothing's confirmed yet, so I'm not going to kind of go into too much about that. And then for me, I still want to be able to help the smaller side of businesses and that maybe don't have the budget for these big projects that I'm going to be leaning on going forward. But I'm going to start getting some help in with that sort of from the middle of the year onwards, I think, because I really want to be able to help as many people as possible. And I think it does get to the point where I can't do all the work. And I've definitely been there a few times. So it's about actually having a structure in place that means that there's someone to outsource that to. So I'm excited about that prospect as well.
Yeah, sounds great. So, look, congratulations on your success so far, and I'm no doubt there's going to be lots more to come. For those perhaps just starting out in business, what advice would you give either your younger self or someone that's earlier in their journey than you are?
I think put yourself out there as quickly as you can is the best advice that I can give you, because I know that had I not had people to push me in the background, I would have put off posting on LinkedIn, put off meeting people, put off networking, put off all of it, because it's just I'm quite an introverted person by nature. It's just not something that comes comfortably. But I went to my first networking event on day 3 of being self-employed, and that was the best thing I could have done, because it almost ripped the plaster off immediately, and it helped me start to get over it. And you grow in confidence so much more quickly, or you develop as a person so much more quickly, I think, whenever you are calling the shots and running your own business than I certainly did whenever I was in paid positions before, because you just have to. And I think the other thing is learn as much as you can from people who know more than you. That's the absolute most important thing I think that I've done so far, because I didn't have a huge amount of work experience when I started out, and I was so aware that I'm good at this thing that I do, but there's so many other things about running a business that I just still am learning so much about. So as much as you can get, be it coaching or mentoring, or just have open conversations with people and just ask people for advice, just take in as much as you can knowledge wise from other people, because if you can walk away from a conversation with even a little hint or a trick or a tip that's going to make your life easier or help streamline your processes or make you more efficient, then that's an absolute win-win. So definitely ask for help as well.
Absolutely. Some sound advice there, Emma. Thanks very much for being on Business Spotlight today. It's been a delight to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.